The morning of the meeting, I polished the dining table with the old lemon oil that has outlived 3 presidents and 1 marriage. My hands move the way a grandmother's hands move when she's about to host something that is not a meal but will require chewing. I set out water glasses that don't match and napkins that do. I put a bowl of clementines in the middle because fruit pretends to be neutral, and because I've learned people speak more honestly when surrounded by something that has its own peel. The house was ready before I was. Houses often are. Mine knows how to hold people who arrive full of sentences they haven't earned. It knows where the sunlight should fall to calm even the graceless. It knows the exact pitch of a floorboard that will interrupt a lie. By 10, the coat rack was busy with other people's seasons. My daughter Elise arrived with her tote of agendas, and her chin like a ruler. My granddaughter Maya slipped in behind her, a dear shadow carrying the kind of notebook that's more sketchbook than plan. My son, Daniel, came last, later than a promise, and earlier than a regret, with his key already in his hand, like the house had been practicing opening for him. We Saturday chairs mean something at a family meeting, so I chose mine carefully. The blue one near the window, where I can see both the garden and the front door. Light on one shoulder, escape on the other. I let the others choose without ceremony. People reveal themselves when no one assigns them a seat. For the record, Elise said, clicking her pen, we're here to discuss Mom's future needs, the disposition of the property, and caregiving roles. In one never weighed. Future needs, disposition. If you listen closely enough, you can hear the words people are afraid to say under the ones they do. My future needs, their fear of losing me before they have decided who they'll be without me. Disposition, their terror that love won't survive the math. Daniel didn't bother with the soft language. He never has. He leaned back in the chair that creaks regardless of who sits in it and said, loud enough to make the lemon oil reconsider its life, let's stop dancing. You'll die soon anyway. Leave the house to me. Silence does a trick in moments like that. It becomes a person and sits at the table with its elbows out. Elise stared at the clementines like they'd been rude. Maya's pencil stopped midline the way a heart might. The floorboard in the hall gave its small warning cough. I smiled, not because I found him charming or because I mistake cruelty for honesty. I smiled because I was ready. And readiness has a way of pulling your mouth upward even when the rest of you wants to reach for your rolling pin. A woman learns, if she lives long enough, that some smiles are shields. Thank you, I said to my son, and his eyebrows did a small dance they learned in adolescence. Now we all know the size of the room we're in. What? He said. Because people who think pragmatism is a personality often struggle with metaphors. The room, I repeated. The one you brought us into with that sentence. It has very little oxygen. Mom, Elise said, whisper sharp, don't. She meant don't embarrass us. She meant don't make this worse. She meant don't choose yourself out loud. Maya reached for my hand under the table. A small, honest gesture that kept me from saying something the church would have to forgive later. Let me be clear, Daniel continued, as if clarity were mercy. I'm the only one who can afford the taxes. I'm the only one who lives within an hour. I'm the only one without grand plans that involve art residencies and part-time virtue. The house should go to the person who can keep it. That's me. Elise bristled. We could sell and split proceeds 3 ways, she said, because she likes math when it behaves. Mom might need assisted living. The market, Daniel said, is my problem if she leaves it to me. I'm here, I said softly. And the room remembered, for an instant, that it had invited me too. Before we divide who gets to be my future, I'd like to speak. Daniel spread his hands, magnanimous in the way a man gets magnanimous when he believes the judge already nodded at him. We're listening. I am not dying today, I said. If I'm lucky, I am not dying tomorrow. If I'm luckier, I will die on a day that begins with coffee and ends with jazz and includes tomatoes that cooperated with the salt. In the meantime, this house is not a carcass for you to portion. He scoffed, The same noise he made at 10 when I told him the goldfish had died and we were going to be polite about it. Be realistic. I am, I said, realistic enough to have prepared for you. Elise looked up, startled. Prepared? I could have pulled out the binder then, the one with tabs, that say things like deed and trust and no thank you. I could have set it in the middle of the table like a cake and handed out slices of information. Instead, I told a story, because documents go to war and stories go home with you. When your father and I bought this place, I began, we stood in the yard and argued about the tree. The elm, Maya said. She knows the story. The elm, I said. He wanted to cut it down because the roots were misbehaving. I wanted to keep it because the shade was generous. We called the arborist. He said, you can't have both. I looked at the tree and said, what if I do the work? What if I water properly and mulch correctly and keep an eye on the roots and the foundation and call you before things get dramatic? He said, maybe. I said, good. Put maybe in writing. Daniel rolled his eyes. He has always confused his forehead with the stage. Is there a point? Yes, I said, and set my palm on the table. The house did not require drama because I did the work. The same is true of my will. Elise leaned in. Agenda forgotten. What did you do? I met with Lena, I said. The lemon and toner lawyer, Maya said, smiling. Yes, I said. I made a trust. I put the house in it. I reserved a life estate for myself. I looked at Daniel. That means I get to live here until I decide not to. Not until you decide I shouldn't. I appointed a fiduciary who isn't related to any of you to handle the mechanics when I die, because grief makes fools and enemies of the best families. I wrote a letter of intent the law doesn't require, but people do. It says the house can't be sold within the first year after my death. It says if it is sold thereafter, a portion of the proceeds must fund the local shelters program for women who need first and last month's rent. It says the elm stays. It says the neighborhood garden keeps their water from my outdoor tap as long as one of those tomatoes shows up on my porch twice each summer. Daniel laughed, a harsh little bark. You can't control everything from the grave. I'm not in the grave, I said. I'm at the head of my own table. Elise's pen lay abandoned like a weapon disarmed. Mom, she said, and there was both admiration and alarm in the syllable. A trust? A simple one, I said. Granite when it needs to be, glass when it can be. If any of you want the house after I die, you may make an offer to the trust at fair market value, minus a credit for all the holidays you graciously endured my stuffing recipe. The fiduciary will weigh your ability to pay without turning this place into a burden it doesn't deserve. If none of you want it, it will be listed. The proceeds will be divided according to the rest of the plan. What plan? Daniel snapped. The one I wrote, I said, with my name on every page. He sat forward. You did this without us? I did this for us, I said. But, yes, I did it with the only person whose consent is required, mine. Elise put a hand to her brow, as if the light had gotten impolite. Why didn't you tell us? Because the last time I tried to discuss my plans, I said, someone told me not to make a scene, and someone else sent me a spreadsheet of costs, as if dignity were an expense to be cut. I looked at Daniel and softened my voice without weakening it. And because I knew, you might say exactly what you just said. You'll die soon anyway, he repeated, stubborn. Why complicate things? I complicated nothing, I said. I simplified everything. I removed the parts where you turn on each other at my funeral. He opened his mouth, but Maya got there first. Uncle, she said, and there is a way my granddaughter can say a name that pats the ego and holds it still at the same time. If Abuela lives 20 more years, will you feel silly about having asked for the house this morning? 20? He scoffed. She's 78. I'm 76, I said, prim as a paper cut. And correcting you is one of the reasons I get up in the morning. Elise laughed then, helpless. It broke the tension just enough for air to remember itself. She reached for a clementine and peeled it without thinking, spiraling the rind into one piece, the way Tomas used to, the way I taught her. The way grief still comes off in long, obedient curls when it feels like cooperating. Daniel wasn't ready to laugh. He leaned in, elbows on the table, the old posture of a boy preparing to bargain for a later curfew. "I invested in the new roof," he said. "I paid the contractor when you got scammed last spring. You fronted the money for the deposit," I said. "I repaid you within 3 days, with the invoice number on the memo line. You want me to pull the canceled check? It's in the binder." Elise winced. "Danny," she did. He waved a hand. "Whatever. I've mowed. I've shoveled. You've been my son," I said. "Not my landlord." He opened his mouth again, and I had the sudden, childish urge to throw a clementine at it. Instead, I sat back into the blue chair and let the light do its generous job. "I would like to propose a new agenda," I said. "A very short one. Item 1, what I want while I am alive. Item 2, what I've already done to ensure you don't have to guess when I'm not." Elise raised her hand, the way she did in school, unable to resist the safety of being called on. "I move we adopt the new agenda." Maya seconded, giggling, because she is governed by joy as much as by rules. Daniel rolled his eyes so hard I feared for their alignment. "What I want while I am alive is this," I said, counting on my fingers because numbers behave when they sit still. 1, no one discusses my property in front of me as if I were a ghost who has overstayed her welcome. 2, no one uses realistic as a synonym for unkind. 3, if you are worried about my safety or finances, you ask me a question and you listen to the answer. And the words, "You'll die soon anyway," do not audition for any conversation. 4, Sundays, whenever possible, we eat here, together, phones in the bowl. I will designate a phone break person each week so nobody twitches. 5, twice a year, we read one section of the binder together. We drink tea. We ask questions. We add sticky notes in my handwriting and in yours, and then we put it away and watch something bad on TV and argue about dessert. Maya clapped softly. Elise wrote the list down like it was a recipe she planned to mess up only once. Daniel made a face. "And what do you want from me in the meantime?" "You," I said, without the part that thinks love is a claim. That said it complete and designed. He snorted. "You always were dramatic." "I always had to be," I said. "You never notice you're standing in a wind until someone else names it." We took a break then, at my insistence. No one makes good decisions on an empty stomach and a full throat. I set cheese and crackers and the olives I buy only when I'm trying to impress my own mouth. I poured lemonade into jelly jars because good glassware insists on being fragile, and I was not in the mood to indulge it. We ate like people who had postponed something hard and decided not to postpone tasting. After, Daniel went outside to smoke a cigarette he thinks I don't know he still allows himself when he's losing an argument. Elise loaded the dishwasher the way she fights. Precise, thorough, training the machine to do what she wants. Maya helped me rearrange the clementines into a smiley face because she believes houses deserve jokes. "Does he get anything?" Elise asked in a whisper, eyes on the window where her brother glared at our peonies. "Yes," I said. "He gets a mother who is not afraid of him. He gets whatever is his by the plan I wrote. He gets a chance to show up differently." "Will he?" Maya asked. "Not today," I said. "But maybe on a Thursday." They both laughed, and I felt the small, ridiculous triumph of a woman who has turned a storm into weather and is still dry. When Daniel returned, I handed him a plate. "Eat?" I said. "I'm not hungry." "Then pretend you are," I said. "It's good practice for when you'll need to be kind, even if you don't want to." He ate. Saturday, he did not apologize. People like him save apologies for days when they can bargain with them. He did not repeat his sentence. That was enough for that morning. About the binder. he said grudgingly. I want to see it. Not today, I said. Today? You sit in my house and remember how it feels to be my son. Next Sunday, we'll read the section on the trust. I'll show you the deed. You can bring your questions and leave your impatience. He looked at Maya as if appealing to the house's conscience. She tilted her head at him like a bird. We're doing a trustee, she said. You should bring scones. It's the law. He rolled his eyes again, but less dramatically. And I took it like an RSVP. They left by noon because Daniel hates to linger anywhere he is not crowned. Elise hugged me too tightly and told me she would bring a salad on Sunday that made me suspicious of her magazine subscriptions. Maya lingered, of course. She always does. She washed the lemon oil off her hands and sat on the floor with her back against the blue chair and looked up at me the way she did when she was 8 and wanted permission to be difficult. You were very brave, she said. No, I said. I was very prepared. There's a difference. Bravery is doing something hard without your papers in order. Preparation is bravery's quieter cousin, who irons her dress the night before. She lay her head against my knee. Does it hurt? What? When he says the mean thing. I thought about that. The honest answer, which I gave her because she always cashes honesty for more than it costs. It used to go in like a nail. Today it slid off like rain on a coat. I chose on purpose. She smiled into my skirt. You'll live forever, she said, which is the lie we tell when we need to practice. At least till Thursday. That's the plan, I said. After she left, I made myself coffee that would offend my doctor and cut a slice of lemon cake that would worry my priest. I took the binder out and reread the letter of intent because our own handwriting convinces us of things other people's cannot. I ran my fingers over the embossed name on the trust document. My name, and felt, for the first time in months, the absence of panic. I put the binder away again, back in the cabinet behind the flower, where mice could read it and behave better. The week unfolded like it always does when you decide to stop being convenient. Small consequences and small consolations. Daniel did not call. Elise texted me articles about healthy boundaries with the confidence of a woman who believes vocabulary is cure. Maya sent a photo of herself in a thrifted blazer with a caption that said, "Trustee attire?" Lena emailed to say, "Proud," which is a thing my lawyer is not paid to say and therefore a gift. Thursday came, the day, apparently, my family does its best repentance. The doorbell rang at 5:03. Daniel stood there with a bag from Bercotti's and a look on his face that existed somewhere between apology and the need for a receipt. "Scones," he said, "with jam. I didn't know which kind you like." "All of them," I said. "Come in." We sat at the dining table again, this time with tea that tasted like we were trying, and I opened the binder to the tab labeled Trust, like I was opening a cookbook to the page where the stains mean success. I read the parts he needed to hear, the parts that told him I had thought of the plumbing and the sky. I told him about the life estate in simple terms that did not require charity. I told him about the letter of intent, about the elm, about the shelter program, about the year of no sale, about the fiduciary who will not be seduced by sentiment or swagger. I did not tell him about the paragraph where I wrote, in my own hand, if any of my children have acted to control me, isolate me, or expedite my exit, this trust shall consider their claims last. End quote. He did not need to hear that sentence to know it existed. He didn't argue. He asked 3 questions, one more immature than the others. I answered with the calm you can only buy by staying alive this long. "Do I get anything special?" he asked at the end, which was both honest and small. "Yes," I said, and I watched his mouth prepare to protest before I finished. "Your father's wrench set. You're the only one who knows how to use it without bleeding. And the box of old photographs from the glove compartment years? I wrote your name on the lid. And if you want the porch swing, you can have it for your place, provided you install a new one here within 2 weeks of my funeral. It will not do for this porch to be without a place to rest." He swallowed, once. "Thanks," he said, and the TH was softer than he likes it to be. We ate scones with every jam. We made faces when the marmalade got bossy. We laughed at nothing in particular. Before he left, he stood awkwardly near the coat rack and said, without looking at me, "I shouldn't have said that the other day." Rumata dong making. Which part? I asked gently. He huffed. "You know." "I know," I said. "Thank you." He nodded, hung there like a sentence that hadn't decided its punctuation, and then left with the Bricati's bag rolling on its own little wheel. I slept well that night, better than a treaty. The house slept, too, pleased to have been spared a future it didn't want to live in. In the morning, I made oatmeal and stirred in brown sugar with the devotion of a penitent. I took my coffee to the porch, where the swing had not yet entered probate, and listened to the neighborhood announce itself. On Sunday, we had trustee as promised. Elise brought a salad that flirted with everyone and committed to no one. Maya wore the thrifted blazer, and a grin that meant she had drawn me as a judge in the margins of her notebook. We read, we asked, we added sticky notes. We argued about dessert. The elm outside made the light dapple the way God does when he's showing off. Weeks passed. Nothing dramatic happened, which is how you know a woman has taken charge of her plot. I went to the shelter with a cake and a question about their rent program, and watched a woman older than me take her new keys, as if they were a fondant decoration she wasn't sure was edible. I wrote a check to the Community Land Trust because kindness needs paperwork too. I let my neighbor's little boy pick the first tomato, and he said, "It smells like outside." And I forgave everyone for a good hour. On a Tuesday, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. It was a woman from the bank who said, "We're updating trusted contacts. Would you like to add one?" I said yes, and gave them Maya's name, and told them her favorite fruit so they could quiz me later. "Guava," I said, and laughed, and thought about how protection is just forethought with lipstick on. Once, in the grocery store, I ran into a friend whose children had already eaten her like inheritance. "How did you manage it?" she asked, in that small aisle where condiments pretend to be choices. I told her what I've told you. I wrote the plan before the panic. I smiled at the boy who wanted my house and handed him a plate instead. I made a binder, the color of storms, and filled it with weather reports. I invited my family to read it out loud while chewing. I kept the swing. She cried a little near the mustard and said, "I thought the only way to keep them from fighting was to give the house to the loudest one." "No," I said. "The way to keep them from fighting is to teach them how to lose." And in case you're wondering about that sentence at the table, the one that made the lemon oil reconsider its life, yes, it still echoes sometimes in the hall when I pass the old photos. "You'll die soon anyway." I answer it the same way each time. I put on coffee, I call someone I like, and ask what their sky is doing. I bring the binder down and read the paragraph where I wrote, in pencil because dominance should be erasable. My home is where I finish who I am. I pet the cat next door when he trespasses. I stir a pot. I sit in the swing. I live. My son said at a family meeting, "You'll die soon anyway, leave the house to me." I smiled, not because I was pleased, because I had already placed every piece I own on the board and written the rules on the lid, because the house is not a prize. It is a place where doors learn patience, because I am not dead. Because even if I were, my name still fits in the mouth of this porch like a key. And because I knew that after the clementines were gone, and the binder grew tired, and the light moved on to other brave rooms, this is what would remain. Sundays. The smell of lemon oil that outlives most men. An elm making shade where I asked it to. A granddaughter who knows the word fiduciary and still believes in jam. A daughter who can put her pen down. A son who arrives on Thursdays with scones and a question about the wrench set. And who, once in a while, when he thinks I'm not watching, touches the porch swing like it is something he loves and not something he wants.